Welcome to the Australian Property Investment Podcast with your host, Aaron-Christie David. Each episode, we ask an expert to share their key insights for aspiring investors to make confident property choices.
G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast, where each episode we ask some hard-hitting questions from some industry experts. And today I'm so privileged to be joined by two wonderful agents, two top 100 real estate agents at that as well, who know the north side of Sydney extremely well. A warm welcome to Donovan Murphy and Nigel Mukhi from DiJones. Welcome, fellas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Guys, thank you very much for your time. I know every real estate agent across Australia, but specifically in Sydney, is super, super busy. So I just want to start by saying thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. And the conversation for today is really going to flow around the current market. We'll talk about listing prices versus sell prices. We'll talk about how buyers can get in and what they can do to differentiate themselves in such a hot market as well. But before we go there, can I just take a moment, just kind of get a little bit of background to you guys. I know you guys are partners in crime at DiJones, but a little bit of background about how you kind of cut your teeth and got into the industry and where you are now. I'm going to start with yourself, Nigel, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I guess one of the great things about real estate is you don't need a uni degree or qualification, which in my case was very good considering I failed my HSC. So I sort of landed in real estate. I thought I was always interested in buildings and thought architecture could be quite cool till I learned you needed a degree. I thought being a property developer might be something that would interest me until I realised you need lots and lots of money for that. So I sort of fell into real estate. I started working for a small agency in like a family-owned business. I was the leasing officer in that business. So I really started at the bottom of the food chain, like the junior position in the business, and worked my way up. I sort of had a bit of time with in corporate real estate with Mirvac, who do all brand new developments. And then I really wanted to get into residential sales. So went out, learnt the ropes from a great guy who's now retired, named Rob Gillespie, who was my mentor at the time. And I worked as a junior agent in his team until I went out on my own in about 2008. And here we are today.
Wonderful. And your area of specialty is a wonderful part of Sydney. We're talking like Kirribilli, we're talking Milson's Point. So you get some pretty...
It is. I go home depressed every day. So I sell a very diverse bunch of property. So anything from, we've got a studio apartment on the market at the moment for around 700,000, right through to luxury homes and apartments, close to 20 million is my highest sale. So it's a very diverse area. And I specialize in the area rather than a certain like property type.
So location specific type of agent would be.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Donovan, let's hear a bit about your story, mate.
It was about 12 years ago. I worked in recruitment at the time, and I actually gave Nigel Mukhi a call and said, "Hey, mate, I'm thinking about getting into real estate. Can I catch up with you for a beer to pick your brains and just get some guidance on how to do it? Because it's a big industry, and I just didn't even know where to start." And we caught up, and by the end of it, we decided that I would come and work for him as his junior and shadow him for a few years, which I did. And fast forward 12 years. And I think if anyone sells a property with Nigel or myself, it's almost one and the same, because I learned, in my opinion, from the best, and I just copied what he does and still do to today. And if Nigel's Milson's Point, Kirribilli, I'm just around the corner in Waverton and Wollstonecraft.
We sell quite a bit of property together as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, I can imagine it says a lot about an agent that can share listings or work together. That's like an abundance mindset for an agent, right? Isn't it? Just going, look, win-win for everyone. The vendor gets a great result. You guys both get, to work on a listing as well. And a buyer gets a wonderful new home, isn't it?
We really push that with our greater team. And our attitude is that, there's area specialists for most of the areas that we operate in, being the agents, and to take them in is better for the client, the seller, because that agent is an expert in that area. And I also think, from my point of view of getting half the fee or half the listing is better than getting none of it. So
I've got a belief that if you hear an address and you don't know how to get to that property instantly, then you should be involving someone else. And the
good way of looking at it.
And I've always lived my real estate career that way.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, sage advice. Thanks very much. Guys, I'm going to get straight into one of the hard-hitting questions that we've got, and especially in like the really hot markets. I mean, Sydney one, but we see it in Byron, we see it in Noosa, we see it in the Gold Coast. Tassie's another one, ACT, where buyer frustration comes out that the listed price or what's on Real Estate or Domain and then what it ultimately sells for is so far above, and there's such a discrepancy between those two numbers. And being a broker, I then have to be at the cold face going, yep, we should probably add 20, 30% to your pre-approval, or how much you think we should be buying as well. And that leads to, I guess, a source of frustration for buyers where they keep missing out, or an offer just blows them out of the water, and they're back to the drawing board and they feel quite deflated from that experience. And maybe they lose a little bit of trust from the agent as well, going, why do they list it so low? So I guess I want to look under the hood of that as a scenario and go, from your perspective, who's to blame, but how does this kind of happen where the listing price then just completely just changes to the actual sale price?
In my opinion, it depends on the market and what the market's doing. So if the market's going up, it's really hard to be, you can't almost like predict what a property is going to sell for in a rising market. At the end of the day, it's usually a competitive environment that gets the property sold. That's why so much stuff goes to auction. But as an agent, I look at what's been selling in the area and do my comparable sales that way, which is what a buyer should be doing or referencing as well. And if there's obvious signs that the most relevant sales aren't being used as comparables and, the cheaper ones are, then yeah, I agree the agent's to blame in that instance because they're probably doing the wrong thing. But I'd also say that on the flip side of that, sometimes the buyers are to blame in the sense that the buyers don't necessarily give you that feedback during the campaign of where they're prepared to go to, and they keep their cards hidden. So when they get to an auction, things sell for more than what you as the agent thought they potentially were going to sell for.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, when it's a cooler market and it's not as active, quite often there's price guides being dropped and we're going the other way to try and work out where the market's biting it.
Yeah. And no one's complaining at that stage when the price is going less than a listed price, perhaps. But yeah,
there's very few complaints apart from the vendors. When the market's going the other way. I love it if I'm standing in an open home when we're allowed to do them. I'm not standing in an open home and a buyer comes up and says, Donovan, can you tell us what the guide price is on this one? And I deliver the guide price to the buyer. I love it when a buyer will say, okay, and can you talk me through the comparable sales used to come up with that figure? For me, that's music to my ears because that's a really, I guess, savvy buyer who's really interested in the area and actually learning about them, about the prices. And then I've got no clients then going, okay, here's the list of comparables that we've got, and I'll just walk them through and say, here's this one. It might have got a little bit more road noise, and we think we're probably a bit better than that one. And then I'll maybe have 7 or 8, and then I'll probably get to a point where it's like, and this one here was another 10 square metres bigger and renovated, and we probably don't think we're going to get there. And then I'll take them on a journey through those. Unfortunately, what's happening a lot at the moment in this climate is you'll show a comparable which might have sold 60 days ago, which was 10% bigger and had a full renovation, and the property that you're selling might even sell for more than that one, which makes it really difficult. But I think if you're an agent and you can show buyers that you're doing your absolute best to price the property accordingly, and then if you do sell it for more, buyers will say, look, you did your best. It's just the nature of the market. But there are certainly lots of other agents out there that are not, not giving the best guidance.
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to underquoting, I guess it's something that the agents look themselves in the mirror and say, are they guilty of it or not? And sometimes there's buyers that just genuinely have deeper pockets. For example, they saw more value than in someone else. And I guess that's the danger with comparables, because comparables are very linear as far as I look at it with clients going, yeah, but that's just on paper. But this one maybe has more emotion attached to it than another property, and maybe it's got renovation upside, and they can put their mark on it compared to one that's already been renovated. That's to someone else's liking, perhaps as well, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so, and I think every property is different in terms of how much interest you've got, and that can depend on if there's a shortage of new listings on the market or going to market like at the moment, so there's then going to be more buyers per property, which is going to be more competition, which is going to mean that it's probably going to sell for more than what it should.
Yeah.
So, and every property is different. Some properties we don't get as much interest, and it doesn't sell for more than what it should have. So you've got to take those things into account as well.
And I guess on that point, when it comes to making an offer, there's probably a couple of parts to this question, but one is you get to see successful offers being made, and then you get to see plenty of unsuccessful offers, and people are maybe, I won't say tire kickers, but people that are maybe lowballing or just throwing their hat in the ring. So when you're looking at the two, when you're looking at people that make really good offers, competitive offers, the ones that really, I guess, spark your interest, what are they doing very well to go to the top of the list, whether you're going, hey, let's talk a deal here, compared to someone that's just emailing a stupid offer perhaps? How do you kind of differentiate between the good buyer versus maybe a not so great buyer?
From my point of view, it's all about qualification. A buyer that's still waiting on their finance isn't ready to sign a contract, for argument's sake. So have they got their finance? Tick. Have they done their due diligence in terms of had the contract reviewed and happy with the terms of the contract? Tick. Have they done a strata report, or have they done a building and pest report on the property and are satisfied with that? Tick. Have they got the deposit ready to go in a bank account and it's not sitting in a term deposit? Yes, tick. Are they willing to waive the calling off period, which, makes it an unconditional offer? Mm-hmm. Yes, tick. That's a good offer. Whereas if you've got another buyer that doesn't have all those things, it's not, to me, it's a conditional offer and it's not as solid.
Donovan, do you want to add anything to that from your experience, mate?
That's exactly what it comes down to. It's just qualifying and just to tack on to what Nigel just said at the end. Sometimes you will get two offers that are, I've heard it, and people say in the past, it sold to someone else who offered less. And so, okay, let's unwrap that a little bit. And if one buyer had, all of those bits of due diligence done, and then another buyer was at a similar level, maybe a touch more, but had done nothing, what we do as agents, we present them to the vendors, and vendors will make their decision. And I would say most vendors will go for the less risky option more times than not, than what essentially is just a figure that's been thrown at them with very little due diligence done behind it. Yeah. But we don't make that decision. We might get asked for our recommendation or advice on it. And if it was me, I'd say, look, what's your appetite for risk? Yeah. Most people, if they've bought something already, they'll say very little and say, well, I'd be going with this one that's very safe.
Yeah, great. And I guess there's that transparency, or sometimes there's a lack of transparency when you talk about, hey, we've already got an offer on the table. So quite often people will make an offer and like, we've already got an offer on the table. And again, speaking to buyers at this side, they don't know, is the agent just telling a furphy, for example? Is there a legitimate offer on the table? Are they trying to hustle me to get some more money? There's two parts to it. There's the ethical component to it, but then there's also the legal component to it. When you have an offer and you're telling a client, we actually already have an offer, what is define that offer that you've already got at the moment? You say as an agent, I've already got the offer on the table. How does that get legitimized to a client that's trying to counteroffer that perhaps?
Not to a buyer.
It doesn't.
There's
no legislation around that. There's nothing. And that's the problem, I guess, with the reputation real estate agents get, or, used car salespeople or whatever, because there is agents out there that will not be transparent and, pull the wool over people's eyes or smoke some mirrors on things. And I just think as an agent, personally, it's a really short-term approach, and you will come unstuck. Anyone that tells porkies or on anything in life eventually comes unstuck, right? Yeah. So I think it's no different to listing and selling real estate. And I think if you take the long-term approach and just do the right thing by people, that's the right thing to do. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm sure people get lied to all the time from certain agents about offers that don't exist or offers that are at a price and they're not. So
the best way, and Nigel and I both do this, is when we go back to what we were talking about before in terms of that qualification for buyers, we make sure that all properties that we take to market, say, for instance, if it is a unit, that legally there's a contract for sale in place. Also, what we make sure is in every sales campaign that there's a strata report in place. So actually arming the buyers with all the due diligence that they really need, that if we were to be selling a property prior to its auction, that the buyers already had that. They've had it for potentially a week or a day, but really to get those things reviewed don't take a huge amount of time, so that you can say, okay, well, look, we've got someone who's ready to move forward. And Nigel and I are both the same. Like, we'll be very upfront and say, look, we've got an offer. It's at 1.5 million. The vendors have instructed us to sell the property. What would you like to do? And that give the buyer that very clear guidance and opportunity to move forward. Yeah. And they might say, well, we've got higher interest than that. Okay, well, if you do, then you're going to need to be above that level, but obviously also needing to be able to transact on it very quickly as well. So have you done your due diligence? So as you can see, we walk, because sometimes it's buyers who are doing it for the first time in 20 years or for the first time ever. So they don't really know what they're doing. So a lot of our role, I find, is actually educating. Yeah. And sometimes you've got a person who buys a property every 2 or 3 years, and they'll probably might dictate the terms a little more themselves.
And then when it comes to, so when you're listing properties, and quite often I'll talk to clients about, have you spoken to the agent about maybe some off-market listings or some silent listings, or maybe even pre-market offers as well, because you guys might have a VIP database, so you get a hot qualified, hey, heads up, this property's coming onto the market. And then a buyer will then ask me, but why would an agent have an off-market listing in such a hot market, for example? Why wouldn't they just take the property to the open market and see what they can get? And that's sometimes where a buyer's agent can come in and kind of negotiate, maybe pre-listing, for example, as well. So a couple parts to it is, are there properties that sit off market from your experience as well? And then what causes them to sit off market? And then the next part to that is, how does a buyer's agent influence the way that you guys work as well on a listing?
There's a lot of properties that sell off market in our area on the Lower North Shore. Yeah. Loads, in fact. And I think the reason around that is that people don't want to go to market. I mean, at the moment, it could be because of COVID and lockdown, and they feel that it's too hard basket, or the market's not going to be there. Sometimes it's they don't want loads of people traipsing through their house because they're private. Sometimes they don't want to spend money on marketing. And if you've got a buyer, you can call me, but otherwise I don't want to do all of the rest. So there's lots of different reasons. And to answer your question, the buyers that we're dealing with generally find out about our off-market properties, right? So Donovan and I work in the same office, or we did at one point, and we would share those details of, we've got this one, they'll sell if we've got a buyer for it, if you've got a buyer, etc. And I might say, I spoke to someone. Where it comes into play though as a buyer is that unless you've got a really tight relationship with lots and lots of agents and you're speaking to them all the time and you're on the top of their radar, you're potentially not going to get in front of all those opportunities. And, as a potential buyer, I can only tell you about what I've got, or, potentially I might have heard of someone else in the office has got something off market. So where a buyer's agent comes into play, and I think a big positive with a buyer's agent in this market at the moment, where there is a lot selling off market, is the buyer's agent will have those relationships with all those agents that you probably don't have time to or can't be bothered doing. And they will be able to unearth those off-market opportunities for you. So that's probably where the wealth of a buyer's agent comes through, plus the other things in terms of their experience with negotiating, the relationships that they have with the agents. The agents know that they're serious. Generally, they don't muck the agents around in terms of making offers and then pulling out, all those reasons.
Yeah, I guess the other part from a buyer's agent is they take your brief and they'll know if a property is going to be right for your family, for if you're looking to grow, for example, you want something to renovate or you want something that's already done. They're the ones that are actually having that trained eye looking over it from your brief to go, is this probably the right home for you to buy as well, isn't it?
Yep.
Donovan, did you want to jump in there as well?
As just a jump on what Nigel was saying, like in a certain suburb in a certain year, there might be 50 to 60 agents that could potentially transact in that particular suburb, and you just can't make that many relationships if you were to hone in there. And again, one of the main reasons a lot of people are looking at off market is because there's such a shortage of stock and an abundance of buyers, and you've got agents that will sell a property, and then a good agent will notify the area, hey, we've just sold this, and someone will say, well, if you've got anyone left over, we'd be interested in selling at the right price. Because you do have people that are out there that they've got a little itch in the back of their mind thinking, if I was to achieve a certain dollar figure, I'd sell. But do I want to go through the home preparation? Do I want to do the landscaping? I probably would need to paint if I wanted to. Like, people just don't want to go through the whole rigmarole of doing all those things. Putting it on the market, so all my neighbours know, all the people at school know. I think there's probably a load of people out there, if they got the right dollar figure and it can just be done nice and simply, they do it.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, again, it's good. That constant hearing from you guys, the same conversations I have with our clients going, this is the reason why off markets becomes the campaign lead up can be quite taxing for a lot of people. And there's the fear of the unknown. You come into it, like government could change lockdown restrictions. Now you're suddenly listing a property in the middle of a lockdown as opposed to waiting for lockdowns to end as well. So timing can be a real deal breaker or a deal maker as well, isn't it? Perfect. When we speak a lot with our investors, we're always talking about the corridors that investors are going to. So take me through. I know, Nigel, you probably have a very unique patch, given maybe Nilsson's Point, Kirribilli. You deal with some exclusive types of properties, but take me through when you're dealing with investors. What has attracted them to your respective corridors and your pockets as well, guys? So I'll start with yourself, Donovan.
Yeah, so for instance, Waverton and Wollstonecraft, 44% of those two suburbs is investment. Main reason, both on the train line, you can be in the city in 14 minutes, and it's just that really good, affordable stepping stone for young executives to rent out apartments. So then, if you look at it from the investor's point of view, there's a certain demand for it in terms of tenancy, so your vacancy periods are going to be quite low, but also really strong capital growth. So. And that's why those two suburbs in particular have been really popular for investors over the years, because it does give you that nice little, well, the yield's probably not great in the last 2 years, but that balance of a little bit of good yield and low vacancy, as well as great capital growth.
Yeah, right. Excellent. Nigel?
I think from my point of view is, it's being so close to the city, like being able to walk into the city over the bridge. I think people look at, okay, what would rent well? What do tenants want? What sort of lifestyle would a tenant want? And I think that's what's driven in my area for them to purchase investment properties in that area. The rental returns aren't great. And obviously since COVID hit last year and there was an excess amount of properties put onto the rental market, the rents have gone down in some cases 25 to 30% on some of the properties. But the properties are still appreciating. And I think that, if you look at it from an approach of what does that allow you to do down the track from that rental property that you bought 6 years ago for $1 million and it's now worth $2 million. There's a fair bit of equity in there that allows you to do other things with.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks very much, guys. Look, I really appreciate your insights. Appreciate you sharing, your years of experience in a nutshell as well. Just as a parting gift to listeners, when they're looking to engage with a real estate agent, what's the best way to kind of, break the ice? So you mentioned before, I think, Nigel, you said it, they play their cards close to their chest. What's the best way to engage with a real estate agent, without kind of blurting all their secrets, so that they go to that top of the hit list, or they're qualified in your mind? So how do they kind of make that?
I just think like transparency, and like with any relationship, things go both ways. So, if you're upfront and honest with the agent, look, I'm definitely interested in this one, or my wife really likes it. Can you just don't do anything without talking to us? And, I see value around your price guide. I'm still trying to work that out. That might be an okay answer. Whereas if you're like, the price guide's $3 million and you say, yeah, I'll think about it, I think you're way overpriced and it's worth $2 million, it's not going to, get the agent thinking that you're on the same page. So I think, there's just got to be a bit of transparency and a bit of, honesty going both ways.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, you touched on as well, Donovan, before when they catch you at open. So, I mean, it's hard sometimes at an open because you're so busy, kind of floating around and showing. So how do they get cut through at that, maybe at the open, or how do they get cut through maybe afterwards as well to get your attention?
Look, if I think of all the buyers that we help every year and over the years, it's only in those very crazy times where an open home is just so busy that you don't have time for people. And there are certainly times when someone could come in and out without me even knowing, because you're in in-depth conversation. But for the most part, when real estate's regular and you might get somewhere between 20 to 30 groups through a property in a 30-minute window, generally you've got time for anyone that does want to speak to you, and just make yourself known to them. And I guess agents are people as well. If you want, but if an agent's being nice and helpful and so on, and you're nice and helpful back, you will just naturally strike up a relationship. And most people look for somewhere between 3 and 6 months, and literally by the end of it, if you're looking at in a certain area where that agent operates in, you're going to see each other every weekend for a long time, until one day you stop turning up, and us poor agents were like, oh, whatever happened to poor old Aaron? We used to see him every weekend. Now we never see him anymore.
He rang Nigel Mukhi to sell.
I'd love to afford in your area, that's for sure. Yeah, look, speaking from first-hand experience, you see the same agents when you're turning up, and you kind of feel a little bit self-conscious sometimes to be able to go up and talk to the agent when there's all these other people around. You feel like I've got deep pockets compared to them, but it comes down to we're all human. Why don't we just kind of let's be real about what we're looking to buy, the style and property. I think even when we've had a chat in the past, guys, too many clients are trying to time the market as opposed to try and buy the right property that's right for themselves, their situation, or their family. And the amount of times they're going through pain to actually, I'm like, you're not overpaying if it's the home that you actually love or you can see yourselves in there for the next 10 or 15 years. And I think we even joked about at one point, you speak to a client like, what did you pay for that property 5 years ago? They won't even remember.
No. And it seems like a bargain in 10 years' time. So,
well, look, to our own situation, my wife and I bought a house in the middle of 2017. So we peaked the last peak of the market, like I think
you bought at the top,
right at the top. And so by the time but we settled 9 weeks later, and we were in negative equity for, maybe the first 2 years we owned the home.
Yeah. And it's so close to home for you and I, right? At least what we do daily. So we never feel like we always feel like we're getting ripped off, perhaps, as well when you're in the market.
But at the same time, again, back to we're still like my wife and I and my family, we were emotionally connected to the home. We went to the auction. We paid a lot more than what the agents were suggesting. We paid a lot more than what the owner was wanting, but there was competition at the auction, and the agents weren't to blame because, I didn't tell them what I was willing to bid. So, and I didn't even know until the day what we were going to bid to, because we went a lot more than what we thought we would, but we really wanted the home. Yeah. So the only people to blame was really ourselves for overpaying. But fast forward, we've only been here 4 years. Fast forward, and like it is, we overpaid on the day. It has been the single best decision we've ever made.
Yeah, and everyone thinks they're paying too much or more than they have to when they're buying. Like I've just bought a place down the South Coast and I paid full asking price. I'm a real estate agent. Who pays full asking price for a property? But it had sat on the market for 5 months. It started at $500,000 more than what I paid for it. Yeah. And they chased the market down and they just dug their heels in. And since I bought it 2 months ago, there's been 2 sales close by for a hell of a lot more. So, I think it's just human nature. Like you want to feel like you're getting a deal, or, you're negotiating well, or you're not paying too much. But I think everyone does feel that they are paying too much at the time.
Yeah, spot on. Excellent. Hey, guys, I've really appreciated your time. I really appreciated your knowledge as well. And on behalf of our listeners, I'll say thank you very much. I know you guys are your best in breed when it comes to the agents where you were located, and even your recognition across Australia. So, guys, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Donovan and Nigel. Thanks very much for being part of this.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Dramas. That's been another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. If you've found that helpful, if you found it useful, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll also share Nigel and Donovan's details below as well, so you can get in contact with the guys as well. But until next time, take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you on another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron. Thanks very much.